Today, I'm talking about Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah and the 2021 Netflix adaptation. The adaptation has major changes. It's almost an entirely different story, but I'm going to cover it all. Hey there, I'm Jessica, and this is Bookshelf to Big Screen. If you're new to the channel, I take a look at books that have been adapted to the big or small screen and tell you what changed. So if you only watch the movie and don't want to look like a fool at book club, be sure to subscribe. Okay, so the story is about two best friends, Tully and Kate. They meet as young teens, and the story follows them through college and into adulthood. Tully has issues with her mom and is focused on her career, while Kate is far more focused on her family. I have major issues with this adaptation because, like I said earlier, it's pretty much an entirely new story. Another issue I had with the adaptation is that the timeline is kind of all over the place. The book is linear. It starts from when they're young girls and we follow them throughout the years as they grow. The show continuously flashes between the 70s, when the girls were teens, the 80s, when they're just out of college, and their present-day lives. Since the show is all over the place and extremely different, I'm going to do this one a little differently and focus on what stayed the same and then talk about all the things that changed. But I'm going to do it in chronological order like the book. Real quick, if you want to avoid any spoilers, sections with spoilers are marked in the description below, so you can just skip past them and watch the spoiler-free bits if that's what you're into. Tully has major mom issues. She was raised by her grandparents because her hippie mom, Cloud, was kind of a flake and only in her life when she felt like it. When Tully was 10, her mom picked her up, took her to a rally, lost her in the crowd, and then left her there. Tully's desire to be someone who her mom will be proud of is the driving force behind her ambition to succeed in life. Tully and Kate meet in the 8th grade when Cloud picks up Tully again and moves them into the house across the street from Kate. After Tully is raped by an older boy and confides in Kate, they become best friends. Tully's a bit of a bad influence, but Kate's mom sets her straight. Tully latches onto Kate's family as a surrogate family, and her new goal of becoming a news anchor is rooted in an attempt to please Kate's mom, Mrs. Mularkey. Tully has to go back to live with her grandparents when Cloud gets arrested. The girls go to college together and Tully gets involved with one of her professors named Chad. Around the same time, Tully gets a job as an intern at a small news station. She gets Kate a job there too, and Kate falls in love with their boss, Johnny. Johnny has a thing for Tully, but he finds out that she's dating Chad, who used to be a hotshot in the news world. Tully has a chance to do a story while the regular anchor is out, and afterwards gets stuck in a convenience store while it's getting robbed. Johnny has her do a live broadcast and she gets shot. Kate gets mad at Johnny because he was more focused on getting the story than Tully's well-being. Chad asks Tully to marry her and move with him to another state, but she decides to take a job as a news anchor in Seattle instead. Tully sleeps with Johnny, and because Kate is her roommate, she has to listen to the whole thing. Johnny pines after Tully for a while, but it was just a rebound for Tully, so she blows him off. Kate finally gets her chance with Johnny and later ends up pregnant. They get married, but Kate has a miscarriage. They do end up having kids later, though. Tully gets a job on a morning show and moves to New York. Johnny takes a job covering the war in the Middle East and gets hurt while he's over there. This is a tricky one because it happens in both the book and the movie, but it happens in different parts of the timeline. So I'll be talking about it more in the What Changed section in a bit. Tully gets her own talk show and moves back to Seattle, and now she's famous. Kate has a teenage daughter named Marah, and they seem to always be fighting. She's been a stay-at-home mom for all these years, but she's been trying to get back to work. Kate's daughter is Tully's #1 fan, and Tully sometimes crosses the line with Marah, causing tension between her and Kate. Something big happened that drove a big wedge into their friendship, but we don't find out what it is until nearly the end. Again, this is one that is kind of the same, but actually really different, so I'll cover it again in the next part. In the book, Kate's brother Sean is her younger brother, and he's barely a part of the story. In the show, he's her older brother, and now he's become a major part of the story. He also happens to be a closeted gay man, and when Tully finds out his secret, she keeps it for him, creating a special bond between the two of them, making them secret besties for all these years. I think they probably added this to add some diversity and more interpersonal drama, but I don't like it. I don't like it because it drives a wedge between Tully and Kate, because Kate already feels like her mom likes Tully more, and now Tully gets to have her brother too. It just sucks. In the show, Mrs. Mularkey has an affair. Why? In the book, Mrs. Mularkey is the role model for the girls, a strong feminist who is the heart of her family. It's a stupid change, but I think I know why they did it. Okay, so this whole series, with the constant cuts between the 70s, 80s, and 90s/2000s, seems to be like it's trying really hard to be like, this is us. So there's a theme to each episode, and they show how that theme relates to the characters in each decade. Another huge change, Kate is getting divorced because she had an emotional affair. We'll talk more about this in a bit. But now, because of that, Mrs. Mularkey had to have an affair? Come on. Both of these changes are stupid and just made me mad. And the whole trying to be like this is us just does not work for this story, in my opinion. Tully's relationship with Chad. In the book, it's disgusting. He was an adult in a position of power coming onto a child who is barely an adult and has a history of sexual assault. He literally takes her to the back of an auditorium where he conveniently has an old couch and has sex with her. This is her only other sexual experience since her assault, and she equates this more pleasurable experience with love. It's sickening. The only kind of redeeming quality in Chad is after Tully gets shot and he rushes to the hospital, genuinely concerned for her well-being, and Kate realizes that he really does love Tully. But it's still really gross. In the movie, they gloss over the whole creepy professor bit and make it so that Tully comes on to him, which is almost worse, like victim shaming. Also, the relationship in the show is a little more volatile. Chad is jealous of how often Tully talks about Johnny, and they seem to break up and get back together pretty often. In the book, Tully takes Kate with her to her job and surprises her with an interview with Johnny, even though Kate doesn't want to work there. In the show, it's the other way around, where Johnny is surprised by the interview and Kate really wants to work there. In the show, Kate dates their co-worker, Mutt, but in the book, Mutt is older and married. In the book, after Tully sleeps with Johnny, Kate quits and gets a job with an advertising company. When Johnny takes her to dinner to thank her for all the work that she's done, Kate finally seizes this opportunity to sleep with Johnny, even though he pretty much says he's not into her. It's kind of sad and pathetic. In the show, they get together after Johnny takes Kate home when her dad has a heart attack. And they try to show that Johnny has been into Kate for a while, but he thought that she wasn't into him, so it makes Kate seem less pathetic and Johnny seem like less of an asshole. In the book, before Johnny and Kate finally get together, Johnny was 100% into Tully, and this is something that Kate stresses about for the rest of her life. It's sad. Speaking of Kate, she has an entirely different personality. In the book, during college, she realizes that she doesn't want to go into the news, but is hesitant to tell Tully, who has big plans for the both of them. She actually starts leaning more towards marketing at this point in her life. Later, she's all about focusing on her family instead of her career. But above all, she's 100% devoted to Johnny. In the show, it's like a complete 180. When she's pregnant, she's asking the doctor how long before she can be back at work, and later she's trying to get back into copywriting. And then she has an emotional affair with the dad from her kid's school and leaves Johnny. I mean, who even is this Kate? It's crazy. Personally, I was annoyed by how passive Kate was in the book and how she basically idolized Johnny. But I think the show took it too far in the other direction. Why couldn't she just be a strong woman who stood up for herself and the things that she wanted without being the one who was to blame for ruining their marriage? Both of these versions of Kate annoy me. Tully is essentially the same character, and I didn't really like Katherine Heigl as grown-up Tully, but then I got to episode 9. But first, let me explain the change here. In the book, after Chad, Tully never really has another meaningful relationship. She sees a British guy regularly when she's in New York, but they keep it very casual. In the show, she meets a younger guy who wants an actual relationship, and she finally gives in. She gets pregnant and they get married, albeit briefly, but she has a miscarriage. In episode 9, she's dealing with the trauma that comes from having a miscarriage, and she goes back to work. During a live show, she switches gears and decides to talk about her miscarriage on the air and invites other women in the audience to share their stories in an effort to destigmatize talking about miscarriage. It's surprisingly powerful, and after pretty much a whole series that I could take or leave, this moment made me emotional. And I've watched it again since the first time, and it still gets me. I guarantee that everyone knows someone who has had a miscarriage, and I believe that many don't even know that that person has gone through something that devastating. So for me, this episode really saved the series. Moving on with the changes. Cloud plays a much bigger role in the series. We see her more when they're teens, and there's moments where she's almost a cool mom. In the book, Tully sees Chad later in New York, and he convinces her to reconnect with Cloud. Tully does a documentary special where she tries to find her mom, and she succeeds, but while she goes to get breakfast, Cloud steals her jewelry and leaves. Side note, this special is what gets Tully her own talk show. In the show, Tully tells everyone that her mom is dead. When Kate is trying to get a job, she promises her new boss an interview with Tully, and this lady manages to track down Tully's mom and turns it into a gotcha piece. Later, when Tully has her miscarriage, Cloud shows up to take care of her, and now she wants to make things right between the two of them. I've read that some of this has to do with the second book in the series, but I haven't read it yet, so I can't really comment on that. Let's talk about Kate's kids. In the book, Kate has a miscarriage, and then a daughter, and then right when she's ready to go back to work, she gets pregnant with twin boys. In the show, they barely touch on Kate's miscarriage and focus more on Tully, but the twin boys are completely absent from the series altogether, which really doesn't hurt the story that much. In the book, Marah wants to be a model, and Tully helps her with that goal without really talking to Kate, which causes problems. In the show, they change it to helping Marah get birth control, which I think is a bit more relatable. In the book, Johnny goes to cover the war when Marah is a baby. He gets hurt badly in an explosion and is taken to Germany for surgery, where Kate goes to meet him. Tully is working in New York at this time, and when her boss finds out that she's friends with Johnny and Kate, she sends her to Germany to get the story. Tully films Johnny while Kate is out of the room, and Kate gets pissed, but eventually forgives her. This is the story that gets Tully a job as an anchor on one of the morning shows. In the show, Johnny leaves to cover the war at the end of the series, and we see that he's hurt, but there's no resolution to this. So I can imagine it's coming in the next season, but I'm not really sure where they're going to go with it, because in the series, Tully's already famous and doesn't need this story as a way to boost her career like she did in the book. Maybe it'll be what gets Kate and Johnny back together, but I'm not really sure. The book starts with Kate as an adult dealing with something heavy and wanting to call Tully, even though they haven't spoken in some time because of a falling out that they've had. Towards the end of the book, we finally find out what was going on. The falling out had to do with Marah and Tully's constant overstepping, but Tully and Marah convinced Kate to go on her talk show for a mom and daughter episode, but it turns out that Tully and a psychologist end up ambushing her with a show about overprotective mothers. Kate tells her off on live TV and stops talking to her. The reason they finally start talking again is also missing from the show. Kate gets breast cancer. The book ends with Tully and Kate making amends, and then Kate dies. Throughout the series, there's teasers of a funeral, and we're kept guessing about whose funeral it is. Sometimes thinking maybe Johnny or even Tully, but then Tully shows up at the funeral, and this is where we find out that Tully did something that Kate has not forgiven her for yet. At nearly the end of the season, we find out that it's Kate's father's funeral, but it's never explained why Kate's mad at Tully. Since the series ends with Johnny getting hurt overseas, I think this big fight might be about Tully using Johnny's hospitalization for her own personal gain, but this doesn't make a lot of sense because Tully's already super famous. So again, major changes in this adaptation, and I'm not really sure where they're going to go with some of them. I kind of get why they didn't give Kate cancer yet. Maybe they're hoping this will be a long-running series, so obviously you can't kill off one of the two main characters. But honestly, I had a lot of problems with both the book and the series. In the book, Kate basically spends her whole life being jealous of her best friend and not thinking she's good enough, and her whole relationship with Johnny is seriously problematic. I don't like how the show made her go so hard the other way, but I do think that Sarah Chalke did a great job with the role. Well, there you have it. That's my recap on Firefly Lane by Kristin Hannah and the 2021 Netflix adaptation. I've included the links to the book and series in the description below, so you can check them out for yourselves. If you enjoyed this review, please click like, and be sure to click subscribe to see my next video. Thanks for watching.